If you park, my favourite part from Tony Gregg, when his version of Tony goes, if you park a tiger on my Georgia Armani, your horse is grassed. Anyway, let's reintroduce that one. I don't think we
should probably start again.
Oh, but chew for 20 chew. The cream, the burn, the white, the what is it? The cream, the burn, the white, the ivory, the off-white, and the beige. Yeah. That's his different jackets.
I know.
Richie. You shouldn't have done that.
Sorry, set you off now.
The Daryl Eastlake that he does on the Wide World of Sports one. Oh, so funny.
Oh!
Huge. Yeah, huge. Oh, here it is, the Chip Lunch podcast. We're back. Tim sabotaged a number of our startings for this episode.
One.
Yeah, but that was a sabotage.
Yeah, right.
Saboteur? That's you? Saboteur Tim. Tim Shabador. That's your middle name. Sabotage is my middle name. Still wearing the same clothes on this podcast?
Yeah, we didn't swap shirts.
No. Thankfully. Welcome back to Craig. How are you?
Thanks for having me again.
It's all right. Yes. Did you enjoy your break?
It was lovely. Yeah. There was no cups of tea or hot cross buns.
Oh, no, we could blame Tim or Hudson for that.
Yeah.
It's Hudson. Hudson's behind the scenes.
Yeah, he's just sitting there with headphones on.
Yeah, he should be getting the cups of tea ready. And,
I did think there'd be
biscuits?
makeup, there'd be sort of hair, and then I thought there'd be a sort of a
tea trolley.
Tea trolley?
Yeah, Hudson's in next time, tea trolley.
Yeah, sort out the catering next time.
Yeah.
You know how they have those like big catering trucks at movies and stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
We had friends of our friends that owned a catering truck. They used to do, was it All Saints? Was that the
the show?
The show, All Saints?
When it was in the hospital.
In the hospital, yeah, in Sydney. And they were the ones who catered our wedding. Oh. Out of that food truck, same food truck. Right.
Just leftovers from All Saints?
Yeah, I think so.
Previous day?
They did our reception for us.
We've got heaps of food left.
Yeah.
It's just that's that weird thing of like, I don't know if you experienced this when you were at the bank, Craig, but just like, there's this thing in corporate land where you just have to have food at every meeting. And I'm like, that feels like such a waste.
Yeah, you say that coming from Soul Revival, where we have food at literally every meeting. There's always eating.
That's very true. Yeah, that's so true. You know what? One thing I wanted to ask you, Craig, before we got back into your timeline, you said you became a Christian at the Billy Graham Crusades. Can you tell us what that was about? Because we kind of skipped over that. It was at Randwick Racecourse and some other things. But what's it like, Billy Graham, this huge evangelist? It was, I think, did he come to Australia 3 times?
Yeah, I think that's third time he came.
What did you? Because I know Stu, for example, became a Christian at Billy Graham, but I think a previous one.
Right.
So what was it like for you, and what's the experience like?
Oh, look,
if you can remember,
I don't remember a lot of the detail.
Okay.
But I think it was just a big emotional, a big crowd, and a well presented gospel message, and it was it felt powerful, and God was obviously there leading, but I don't remember a lot of the detail.
When you're asked, if you can remember, when you're asked to come forward, do you go on your own or do you go with your parents or?
I don't remember that.
Oh, that's all right.
I think Mum was on the team, sort of down the front. Sort of you sort of got alongside. There was sort of leaders down the front that you sort of took you aside, and I was already a Christian, I think, at that point, but just that was sort of a landmark, a big event.
Commitment.
And my limited memory is, do I need to go down there? I think I'm already a Christian, but I think the moment, it was significant, and so I did go down.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we left last episode talking about how you just got married.
Yep.
Moved to the Shire.
Yep.
And then you decided to go to a new church as well. So a lot of new beginnings, really, and also working for a new company as well.
Yeah.
That's a lot of new stuff all in one go.
Mm.
How did you? Is there a way that your faith kind of influenced like all this new stuff?
Mm.
I mean, I suppose you're young and you can kind of get into that. There's not too much else holding you back, but
Yep.
yeah, was that something that was on your mind? There's like all these new things going on.
No, it wasn't, to be honest. But probably more of a thing now as you get older. Sort of, you sort of get stuck in your ways, and you think, oh, this is a bit new and different. Do I really want to go down that path? But I think at that age, you just sort of embrace change, and you've got the confidence and it wasn't an issue.
There's not a ton of responsibilities holding you back, are there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So about 24, I think you said.
Yep. Got married 24.
24, going to a new church.
Yep.
Life seems to be on the up, which is great. And you're just working away being project manager building.
Yes.
And so is that really a lot of your career in the next perhaps 10 years or so?
Yeah. So that was initially building a building company, but they also sort of had a civil line as well. So there was sort of two different sort of projects that they were running, and I ended up in the civil side of things and enjoyed that more than building. Construction, I spent a bit of time down at Wollongong Uni on refurbishing one of the buildings down there, and just all the architectural finishes and sort of high level of finishes that would get inspected, and the digging in the ground and the dirt was a bit easier, more to my liking.
So civil is more kind of excavation.
Yeah, the
things like
excavation, the groundworks, the footings, piling, all that side of it.
Piling, piering.
And then I ended up changing to a company that just specialises in rock bolting, anchoring and shotcreting. So it's a lot more technical, and still a lot of it's underground and never seen, but pretty important, because when I first started, we were doing a lot of the excavations in the city, holding up the perimeters. Before you get to rock, the perimeters have got to be retained.
So the building next door doesn't fall
down.
down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So securing that. Excuse me. So I ended up in that company for 15 years, doing that, managing projects for them. So I ended up in that company for 15 years, and it was a hard slog. Like by this stage we've got 3 young kids. We've moved out to Heathcote, long hours, a lot of responsibility.
Travelling as well.
Yeah, travelling all around Sydney, a lot of driving. It's looking back now, you just wonder. And then maintaining a house, and we bought Harley, our 3rd child, home from hospital, and we sort of started an extension on the house the week he came home. It was a pretty busy time, and quite a demanding job. But the goal was that Robin would stay home with the kids, and so you just sort of got to get through that period and do what you can to make that happen. And
You said it was difficult, and I mean it is a hard time. I think when you've got a lot of how close were your kids in age together?
Yeah, 2.5 years apart.
So that's pretty difficult.
Yep.
And then you've got to, I reckon it's probably one of the hardest times of your life in terms of my experience, when you've got young children and you're trying to kind of establish career.
Yep.
And then it's all happening at the same time.
Mm.
I think that's the thing you're trying to say.
Yep.
Tell us about the timing of when you had kids and when you moved to Heathcote. Did you still stay at Caringbah, or did you go somewhere else?
Yeah, we did. We kept travelling to Caringbah Anglican, and it became difficult, and we felt isolated because we didn't have that community connection at Heathcote, which is what we wanted. So in the end, we shifted to Engadine Congregational Church. We were only there for about 2 years, and there was aspects of that where we really liked, but there was certain things that we struggled with. And so we ended up going back to St Phil's for a short period, because it's just such a big thing to move your family
It would be.
to another church.
Yeah.
And then it takes years to build connections and relationships. So we just went back to the St Phil's. It was easy. We still knew people there. It was comfortable. And then eventually we made the switch to Heathcote Anglican Church, which is connected to Engadine, which is much bigger. Describe it like a little country feeling church, like an old fibro place. And Robin really likes the smaller side. She really loved it there. And an older congregation as well, with a few young families. So we found ourselves there, and that was really good for building local connections. And then when you were up at the shops or you were walking, you would see people from church, and that was a nice feel to have that connection around where you lived, which we'd been missing.
Which is what you were searching for, like you said.
Yeah.
Can I ask why you thought that was so important? Like, why is the community aspect so important? I agree with you, but I want to hear what you think about it.
I guess it's just a feeling that you're just jumping in your car and, driving 15, 20 minutes to get to your church. So I guess it's just an isolated feeling. So when you're back at home, you don't have a lot of people that live in your street or around you that go to church with you and have that connection. So I don't know if I've described that very clearly, but it was,
I feel like you're describing like one element of church that maybe is sometimes missed, which is the fact that you're Christians, and yes, you have to work, and yes, you have to go to school and all that stuff, but there's this perhaps one of the purposes of church is to meet together and go, we are actually part of God's family and we are doing this together. And I feel like that's something that you at first felt you weren't able to quite achieve. But then as you were able to go to Heathcote eventually, you're like, we're doing this, we're doing our lives, and yes, we have to be separate from people, but then when we come together at church, we're here as Christians worshipping together, worshipping God, and we know that as we do that, we can go back out into the world as Christians again. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And then and it's just having just familiar faces around that you see. Like, if you're just seeing people for an hour on a Sunday and that's it, and they don't live too close to you, so you don't go and see them during the week, there's that isolation is the best way to describe it. But when it's in your community, in your neighbourhood, you're walking around, you're bumping into people, and you're seeing them outside of church, and you can get to know them as a person outside of a Sunday morning.
Just those extra little moments. That's good.
Does that, being able to see people and being in community, does that kind of spur you on as a Christian yourself?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And that's what I've found really amazing, just volunteering at the Salvation Army, which we can talk about. But I mean, just an example, today I had to drop off my car, and I'd never been to this mechanic before at Heathcote. I dropped off my car and I said, I haven't been here before, but Phil from church recommended I come here. And he said, oh, Phil, yeah, I know Phil. And how do you know Phil? He rattled off a few things that Phil does. I said, I know him through the kids went to school together and we go to church together. So I was able to just sort of say that's how I know Phil, and that's what we do. And then just crossing the road to work home, I bumped into Frances and her son who were waiting for the bus to go to school. And so we don't go to church with them anymore, but they still go to they go to Heathcote Anglican. And so I was just able to sort of see them and have a quick chat, but had to run. So it's just bringing all of that the relationships together.
And you're like, hey, we're still here. We're still going for it and for God.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Can I ask you about all the work you've been doing in building and civil engineering and all that stuff?
Yep.
What's it like being a Christian in that? So I work for a building company,
Mm-hmm.
and some areas of that industry can be pretty rough.
Yep.
How have you been able to live out as a Christian in that time?
Yeah, it is, and I mean, particularly the guys in the field that are doing the hard work, they just don't have really any understanding, or there's just so worlds apart from what I believe and what they believe. So that's difficult. So yeah, it's a challenging environment, and I guess it's, you just end up segregating that apart. I don't know. You live to the best of your ability at your workplace and do your job really well. But yeah, there's not a lot of chance to sort of, talk to these guys about your faith, and that they're going to receive that in any positive way. So yeah, it's quite a difficult environment. Absolutely.
Have you ever had like a positive experience in the 20 plus years of doing that?
Not really in the workplace. No.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I'm not naturally sort of very good at explaining my faith, I don't think, but it's not a reason not to. But yeah, I'm not comfortable doing that.
Yeah. That's okay. I also wanted to ask you though, like, you kind of mentioned your family, but not really a lot about Robin and really what your like your relationships like. But also like tell us about your whole family and who's who in the zoo and and how old they are and things like that. And then I've got a follow-up question which I'll ask you afterwards.
Okay. So Bronte's our eldest daughter. So she's 25. She's currently in Mount Panorama in Canada, which is not far from, sort of between Calgary and Banff. So she's working in a ski resort. So she's been there.
She get the skiing bug from you?
She doesn't actually like skiing.
And
she doesn't really like the cold, but it's where she's ended up. So she went over this. She's had 2 sessions at a campsite, summer camp in New York State, few hours north of New York City. A very wealthy sort of appeal to students from that area. And so she's done 2 seasons there, and then she got her Canadian work visa, and so she's just sort of continued this trip on from there. And so she's coming, she'll be back in 8 to 10 months, we think. You
hope?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, so she's our eldest, and Jesse is our middle son. He's 20, I'm probably going to get this wrong, 23, 23-ish. And so he's engaged to Bonner. And so they're actually going to be moving back into our place in 2 weeks. They're getting married next March. So we know Bronte's coming back for that. So that's given Robin some hope that a date we know Bronte will be back for.
Yeah, okay.
So that's exciting. This is all new to us. They got engaged. Jesse proposed on New Year's Eve when they were on holidays in South Africa.
Okay.
So so it's all pretty new. We've got an engagement party at our place in June. I think I'm allowed to say that. So
we'll bleep it out if you need us to.
So that's exciting for them and for all of us. And then Harley's our youngest. He's 20. So Jesse's an electrician. He's just finished his apprenticeship. He's doing his capstone, which is the final license. So in a month's time, he'll sit that, and that gives him his license.
Yeah, cool.
And then Harley's 20, and he is studying nursing at Wollongong Uni, second year. And he's very involved in Engadine Anglican.
Yeah, sweet.
Goes along nights,
Mhm.
runs youth on Friday nights.
And thinks you're not going to be able to talk
Leader.
about much in the
Yeah, that's
podcast, is that
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And so what about Robin as well? Like, can you tell us like your favourite qualities that Robin has?
Okay, she's very caring, very loving, and emotional. So she helps me with that side of things. So
Tell us in what, you've mentioned that before, tell us in what way. Like, highlight that for us.
I think just around the kids, raising the kids, just the soft, caring, nurturing side, and the connection that she has with the kids on that emotional level. Rather than I'm a real rules-based, follow a drawing, engineering mind.
Okay.
And so I need those sort of parameters and structures. Moving targets everywhere can be difficult. And so
Kids don't always follow the blueprint that we have set
that's
out for
right.
them.
No,
That's
they
right.
do not.
So kids, you need to think outside those parameters.
Yep.
And Robin is much better at that. Yeah. And she's put up with me for 30 years, so yeah.
Something there.
Yeah.
The follow-up question that I was talking about was that what has God taught you through being a father?
Ooh, what has he taught me? Yeah, I think it's probably the big thing is you start thinking outside yourself. We're very self-centered and what are my needs? What do I want? And so having kids helps you sort of refocus, and it's not all about me. It's about serving, and I guess there's very close connections with God our Father and how He sort of loves and cares for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably
Just to go on for that one, something that often people say is that it highlights what, to some degree, our relationship with God. Like when we have kids, you know what you're like with God and your relationship with God. I think that's there's a lot of people saying that, and I think that's you're saying that as well. Is that it's a really humbling thing, I would say, being a parent.
Yeah.
So one question I also wanted to ask you was, and sorry Tim, I've been hogging the questions on this on today's episode. You moved to a couple of different churches, and of course there's no problem with that. Sorry, but I'm interested in when did you end up coming to Soul Revival?
So I think it's another example of how God moves in your life when you don't even really understand it at the time. So the kids were growing up at Heathcote. There wasn't a whole lot for them there. And so they had to be shipped up to Engadine. So we would go to church, and instead of running a program, they had one for the little kids, but when they got to sort of teenage or early teenage, they would drive them up to Engadine. And so there was a bit of a disconnect there. And then Harley's Sport shifted from, we'd grown up with them doing Saturday morning sport, which was perfect, it worked well. But then all of a sudden he'd got to an age where he had to play on a Sunday morning. And so we're at this crossroads of, what's this going to mean? Do we just pull him out of sport? Do we, he's still enjoying playing. Do we forego church on a Sunday morning? And so anyway, we'd met Marty and Fee Simons at Heathcote when he was the student minister. He was at Moore College. And so we got along really well with them. And there was a group of families around our ages, kids the same age, so we connected well with them. He'd moved on, and we still kept contact, and he said, Soul Revival have a Saturday night service, and we'd never heard of a Saturday night service before, and so we thought, well, okay, and we started along, and that was our introduction to Soul Revival, and it was a good fit. We were hoping that the kids would sort of find their way there. Bronte and Jesse didn't really find a group that they were comfortable with. And then Harley ended up going to Engadine, where he's got plenty of friends and happy there. And so over those couple of years, then the Sunday morning started. And so it was just Robin and I then. So we ended up just going to Sunday morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. From the beginning of Sunday starting? Sunday
Yeah,
Kira?
I think it was, yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, because you were part of that.
Part of the launch team, yeah.
You were.
So it must have been early days. And how long ago was that, Tim? I struggled.
I was trying to work out. I think next year, 2026, is going to be our 10-year
Sunday morning?
Sunday morning.
Is it really?
I think.
Huh. Okay.
Something close to that. I did.
Oh, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Because it was quite a few years before COVID, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that probably sounds about right. 2016 then?
Yeah.
When Sunday Kira
I
Week.
came across a Facebook post, and they throw up your memories.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them was, hey, sorry, we're going to try something new. Never thought of before. It's a Sunday morning church service. We're not sure how it's going to go. And it was not long before that memory got thrown up that I've been talking to Jai about Yarrawarra, because Yarrawarra is 10 years this year, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe, no, I don't know. I can't remember now. Anyway, we were talking about anniversaries, and so it was stuck in my mind. And I paid attention to the date. I think it was 2016.
Yarrawarra is not 10 years, is it?
No, yeah, maybe it was 5 years for Yarrawarra or something. I can't remember. Yeah, anyway, we were talking about anniversaries of.
I went to
gatherings.
Yarrawarra in 2019 for a few months. Like the end of 2019, we were there. Anyway, let's do some maths later.
Bring your son in to work it out for us.
Leo could figure it out for us.
Yep.
Just a question on, you mentioned just before about community and that being really important. Is that something, that we focus, like that's a big focus of us at Soul Revival, being long-term, low-key and relational. Was that part of the appeal of making Soul Revival your home?
Yeah, I think, having meeting around a meal and, spending more time with the people there.
You've kind of been doing that back in the day at the Brethren Church, right?
That's right. Well, but even St. Phil's was, the Sunday night service was sort of geared for young families. Yep. And they had a meal, so that was familiar to us, which we enjoyed. So I guess the sense of community, the good teaching, and some familiar faces, and that's sort of grown from there.
Yeah, okay. So mentioning the Salvos thing, you said that you volunteer on Fridays at the Salvos.
Yep.
But you said that was kind of precipitated by something else that happened in your working life. Can you tell us about that and where that kind of led you to volunteer?
Yep. Probably it's just over 3 years ago, working away at work. I was at a site at Mona Vale, and it was a bit of a stressful morning, and I had to walk up the hill to my vehicle, and so I was walking up this hill, and I was just puffed. I'm fairly fit and walk a lot, and I was just getting tired. And so I actually leant up against one of the trucks just to sort of get my breath. Yeah. And as I did that, my forearm was sort of resting against my chest, and I could feel my heart just racing. And I thought, this doesn't seem very good. And so I pushed on up the hill a little bit further, and so I had to have 2 breaks by the time I got to my car, got into the car, and I thought, I've got to go to the hospital. And so, good decision or not, I thought, I'll drive there. So I Googled Mona Vale Hospital. So I know there's Northern Beaches as a new hospital, but I knew Mona Vale was, but I Googled it because they're in the process of closing part of it down, and I thought, have they got an emergency or what's the... So anyway, it said there was an emergency there, which was about 5-minute drive. So I jumped in the car and I drove down to Mona Vale. I just parked the car and went in, and she said, "Oh, just take a seat." And I said, "I don't think I should be taking a seat. I'm really hot. My heart is jumping out of my chest and I'm not feeling very good at all." She said, "All right, come straight in." And so they got me down on the bed and they hooked me up, and my heart rate was over 300 beats a minute.
Whoa, that is high.
And and so the nurses are around, and then they drag the doctor in who's in the next bed, and I can see genuine alarm on his face at what he's looking at. And at this stage, I'm just not knowing what's happening. So that was a bit of a scary situation. And so they said, he just said, "Order an ambulance, lights and sirens. We've got to get him out of here, because this is just a small emergency department." They had to get me up to Northern Beaches, where they've got everything you need. And so the ambulance came, took me off there, but it did slow down to sort of mid 150s before we got in the ambulance.
It's good. It's halved.
Yeah. And so that, and then I spent 2 days at that hospital, and so then I had to go through the whole process of cardiologists and checking things out, and I've never really had any bad health issues before. And so they put you on beta blockers and blood thinners as a preventative thing, because they don't know what it is. They just sort of guesswork. And so these tablets were just, I was feeling like brain fog all the time, and all I can put it down to is the tablets. And sort of that was a process of not feeling great. And I pretty much went back to work, but I worked from home. I couldn't drive for a few months, and so I could work from home. But I've still got the sort of the stress and the everything that comes along with that. And then I finally got back to work, and I said, "No, I can't do this." And so they still hadn't worked out what it was. In the end, they did do an investigation into the heart, and I had an underlying arrhythmia. So they did go into the heart and they score out the inner wall of the heart, and that's changed my heartbeat slightly, but they couldn't detect anything seriously wrong. I think it was just a panic attack, but no one will really, they can't say. But once I had that procedure, I could then go off all the tablets, which then I could sort of start feeling better again. But that was sort of a real sort of wake-up call as to how am I going to manage this. And, you know, work has always been fairly high stress, and I've sort of want to be conscientious in what I'm doing. And so if you get behind on work, the solution is you just work more hours. You just keep going till you get on top of it, but you never get there. And so I think that's all they can put it down to. So there's no serious underlying issue now, but how do you sort of maintain a healthy work-life balance to avoid that happening again? Yeah.
So is that kind of like they're saying is your assumption it was kind of like a burnout kind of episode? Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so you put that down to just working so much?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Too much pressure and stress over a long period. Yeah.
And is that arrhythmia now just a constant for you, something that needs to be managed, or?
No, so I don't need any ongoing.
Okay.
Probably got to go to the cardiologist every 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
But yeah, they've given me the all clear.
Okay.
But it's more of a managing stress levels going forward. So the idea is I work part-time in a low-stress environment and not push myself too far to bring that sort of thing on again. And you can't measure any of these things.
Yeah.
And it was the scary thing is, you know, you hurt your ankle, you've got a rehab plan. You know that in 6 to 8 weeks you'll be okay. If with your heart, and then it sort of starts to affect your mental well-being, there's no way of measuring how that's going. So that sort of dictated that I'd go to part-time work and keep my stress levels down.
Can I ask you a question about that? So the thing that I've heard about burnout, and I'm not saying this is true, is doing lots of work, like you're saying, lots of hours, in something that's not really bringing you much joy or I'm trying to think of satisfaction maybe, or contentment with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true? Do you think that was true in your case, or it was just more too much stress building up, and then perhaps, like you said, it was a panic attack, and it was that was your body saying this is enough? What do you think?
I think it's just the body sending you the signal. So yeah, it's hard to.
Like, were you still finding enjoyment in your work, or is it?
Yeah, there definitely was. Like the thing I enjoy about civil and what I was doing, there's something to show for what you do.
Yeah.
Although a lot of it's buried under the ground, you know, once things are finished, so you can't see too much for it. But you're achieving something physical and tangible in what you're doing, and I enjoy that. Office work behind a computer, I don't get that same enjoyment, but it's less stress. So there's that sort of, yeah.
Can you point out what the main stress is? Is it this has got to get done, but the building can't fall down, and this needs to hurry because this will delay the job if we don't get the job done?
Yep.
Like, am I on the right track there?
Yeah, there's so many moving parts. So your job is to manage this complex project.
Yep.
There's so many moving parts, and so your success on how that goes is how well you can juggle all these moving parts that, you know, are out of your control, but you're accountable to get them done on a certain time and date and in a budget. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the other thing is there's so many unrealistic expectations from clients. So you're reporting to clients. You know, that the thing that sort of pushed me out of building was every year they would think you could build something 10 or 20% quicker.
Oh, we've got to be in before Christmas.
So it's exactly right.
Yeah.
You'd be.
They always had to be in before Christmas for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were working on a luxury house in Whale Beach where they wanted a pool on the edge of a cliff, and we had to get the foundations right for that. And they only use it 2 weeks of the year, and so the pool had to be finished for, you know, January 10 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then they're back off in, you know, the Bahamas or wherever they live.
Oh.
And so, yeah. So I think there's your boss's expectations and sort of driving you, but then there's clients on top of that.
Yeah.
So there's just, a huge amount of people to satisfy, and it's just very difficult to pull it all together.
And I feel like what you're saying is the work is like, you know, but is it the managing the people and hassling you is the thing that you find difficult?
Yeah, the work itself is quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the people that have borrowed lots of money to build a big apartment block or something that are hassling you for it, and you're like, but this bloke didn't turn up, and he was meant to do this, and they don't care because it's your job to look after it. And
that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So you become responsible for everything. So
and for things that are out of your control, like you said. Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. Okay. Well, kind of as we wrap up your episode, I always like to ask this question at the end. Sometimes because it gives us some good ideas for titles, but also because I think it kind of is a good way of wrapping up the episode and presents a nice way of kind of looking at like the overview of kind of how we've looked at your life and how God's worked in it. If you go back over all the years, and as we said, you know, you became a Christian at the Billy Graham crusade or just before, and that was a really pivotal moment. What would you say, what would you like to go back and tell your younger Christian self now?
Okay. Got any thinking music?
No. We do have some buttons programmed on that thing, but
I think looking back, you realise as you're living through these situations, you don't always understand that God's walking alongside you, but it is evident looking back that He is there, and He does have a plan, and that mightn't always fit in with what we have in mind, but God is good and He has a plan for us. So I think there's some comfort in that, and just thinking about those couple of stories, it's like even through that difficult circumstance with my health, it's swung me into new things that I never had time for, and that are more fulfilling than working and really enjoying it. Like even just the church cleaning, I've been able to do that now because I'm not working Thursday morning, and that's been great.
Well, thank you for serving us,
becoming part of that team. It's the time that I've freed up from not working. I've been able to put a bit more back into more meaningful things.
Okay. Yeah. And as a offshoot of that, I forgot to ask you about the Salvation Army thing. We didn't talk about that. Tell us about that before we wrap it up.
So that's really exciting. So it's a community hub that started in Heathcote, and it's run and managed by the Salvation Army at Barton Ridge, and as a ministry, not owned by the corporate salvos. And so there is half the shop is dedicated to clothes, as you'd normally expect, and bric-a-brac and bits and pieces, and the other half has got lounge chairs, a nice coffee machine, and often cakes and biscuits for the people that come in. So they've just got a real heart for people who are struggling socially and financially. That's the heart of what the Salvation Army are looking to help people in that area. And so they just felt there's a need in Heathcote. There's a caravan park down the road, which sort of there'd be, I don't know, at least 50 people that live in there. And it's affordable housing. And so the sort of people that are in there can often need help. And they're in difficult circumstances, sort of building their lives back up from some sort of difficulty. And then, I'd lived in Heathcote all my life, well, not 25 years. And to hear that there's 30 or 35 people that live in the national park and just, that's where they live.
Really?
They camp and they live there. And the rural fire service and the police keep number check, because when they backburn and that sort of thing, they've got to know where people are and how many. So they sort of have an idea how many there are. So there's that sort of direct need right in our suburb, and so they're sort of catering to that. And even so, I got involved early before they opened the shop. We built an office, we put up a wall, we did some painting, and got the shop ready before it opened. We put a new kitchen in. It used to be a restaurant. So we pulled out the kitchen and put a new kitchen in. So there's the ability to cook meals in there. And there's a 3-bedroom apartment upstairs. And so they've dedicated that to short-term male accommodation, because there's not a lot of services for females, but there's even less offered for men who go through, a breakup or difficult life circumstances. And so there's a couple of guys, 2 guys living up there at the moment. So yeah, it's been, and it's like I had never imagined that this is the space I would be volunteering in, but this is where God sort of led me. And so Robin's, we both do it on a Friday, and she's now studying social services and thinking that she could,
wow,
above volunteering,
that's cool,
generate work in that space as well. And it's, I think the exciting thing is you sort of your church life. It is isolated. There's not a lot of connection with the outside community and people in need. And this has been, it's pushing me into this area where, I never thought I'd be comfortable just chatting to people. I'm more of an active, hands-on sort of person. So it was easy to do the work in the shop, and now I'm sort of making coffees, and I'm happy doing that, or the till, or just chatting to people and just sitting around talking. So yeah, it's pushing me into areas that 3 or 4 years ago I never thought I'd be doing that. So and they're really beautiful kingdom vision Christians that are sort of running the shop. And so yeah, it's great.
It's interesting just noticing you talk about church cleaning and that you talked about being more meaningful, but I can see your eyes lighting up and you're smiling about it. That's really, really fascinating that you're really enjoying it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's great that God continues to grow us and develop us into the circumstances that He puts us in. That He gives us new gifts. He gives us new ways of growing in our love and care for others. And we're seeing that, in the way you say 4 years ago you wouldn't have done or been comfortable doing those things, and you're becoming more comfortable. Like God's growing in you the ability to keep being helpful and in His service. It's wonderful.
It feels like it's not a hard growth for you. Like it is, but it isn't. Like you're really enjoying it rather than another growing moment might have been when you had the health concerns. But that was hard. Yeah. But this one it's bringing you a lot of joy, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
I think I suppose as we wrap the episode up, you just said before that looking back over your life, it's like, you can see that God's walking alongside you all the time. And that's just an example, just another example of that, is that He's doing it even if we sometimes aren't listening as well. And I'm not saying you're not doing that, but I'm saying He's growing us no matter, in spite of ourselves a lot of the time. And I think that's probably, and in some of the stories you told me you've illustrated that God is walking alongside us all the time. And we can't, it's almost like we can't really stop it. We can, but if we're holding fast to Him, He's going to grow us no matter what. I think that's what's, come out of this podcast today, these last 2 episodes, is that, I think you have highlighted that for us, is that, God was always going to grow us no matter what. I think that's really cool. Tim, may I ask if you have any other final words?
I do not.
For having Craig on the podcast. You do not?
But thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. It's been great. Thank you so much for taking the time, especially out of the thing that brings you a lot of joy, which is volunteering at Salvo's. You took the time out this morning to do this. So thank you very much for doing that.
That's all right.
Please send our apologies on to your friends up there.
Yep, we'll do. You'll have to come by for a coffee.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Maybe we do a podcast there.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you very much, Craig. It's been a pleasure. And it is why we do this podcast. Yeah. So we get people on that we haven't spoken to before to hear about how God's worked in their life. Stories of Jesus changing everything. So thank you very much. And of course,
thanks, Joel. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Hudson. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Hudson.
Thank you, Hudson. Boys. Linesman.
This isn't a tennis match. Come on. But I mean, it's been fun. So thank you very much. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And thank you everyone that's been listening and watching. And especially shout out to Harley if you made it this far.
So your dad did have something to say.
Yeah, he does have stuff to say. Come on, Harley.
How much are you going to talk about me? You'll have to listen.
I think
I'm not listening.
Not nearly enough.
I think we've talked about more than he actually probably expected now.
Yeah.
As you brought that up. So Have fun at Ingadine, Harley. You're awesome. But yes, thank you to everyone. Chuck a comment on our YouTube if you feel like it after Craig's story. That'd be amazing. But for now, we always like to finish with a one way. So let's do that.
One way.
Wait.